I'll buy it for £1 and I'll clear the debts. Yeah, that's my contribution. First day, 40 grand in the business from me, injected, cleared the immediate debt. People bursting into my new office door in Derby, calling me a crook. The former owners, Kevin and Haley, turned around to me and said, if you don't give us back the company for £1, we're going to get all the staff to quit and leave.
The best guests on a podcast are those who have achieved immense amounts of success and they're not fussed about people's views on what they say or do. Welcome to the Exiteers podcast.
Morning, Charlie. Absolutely delighted to have you on the Exiteers podcast today, mate. Would you do a little intro for the audience?
Yeah, no problem. My name is Norton. I'm CEO of Vamos, which is a group of companies, rather than being Vamos Business Transfer, which is a business broker or a corporate finance advisory. And we mostly do businesses between 1 million to 50 million in valuation and help them go to market and exit.
Nice. Real. Thank you, Charlie. I'm super excited about this conversation because there'll be an element of learning for me as well. I know you as Charlie Vamos rather than, your kind of backstory and your exit story. And with a title like the Exiteers podcast, you would assume that we want to dig into that a little bit. So talk to us. Your background is pretty wide and varied in way of businesses that you have set up and built and sold. Where did that journey start for you?
Well, I was thinking about this morning, funny enough, just hit my mind. And my first ever business I set up when I was 14, actually. It was a tag rugby coaching company for kids in primary school.
Nice.
With my older brother Reese, and it was called Tag Rugby Havering, and eventually Tag Rugby Essex. And that was like a part-time side hustle type of income you had to get us through school and college. And then I sort of grew up in the transport industry through my father, became a qualified transport manager at the age of 18. And then I was buying small businesses at 17, 18, but very small. I'm talking about jet washing vans, food trucks,
Yep.
all sorts of things I could collect my pocket change with and throw the money into. And I'd done my first leverage buyout for when I was 21 with a company called Newcroft Training, which was a HGV training. And that was an interesting story, how I, got that deal and how we got the deal over the line. Essentially, I set up as a transport consultant and a training school independently, like on my own. Very small. We had one classroom, very smart, cool classroom. And I was ringing up all the local competitors, all the big boys, as I say. And one of them said to me, there's no point of you setting up. I run the biggest training school in the area. I'm about to buy the second biggest training school, which was Newcroft. And basically try and put me down for trying to get into the industry. He wasn't a very welcoming chap. So that day I ran over to Newcroft, which is actually on my industrial estate. I popped my big fat head in there, and a lovely lady called Kim and Sue, two ladies called Kim and Sue, was in the office. And I just said, is this place for sale? And Kim, the owner, bless her, she's about 4'11", brilliant lady. She said, who told you this? Who said this? I was like, the other guy, Mark, the competitor. She was, we agreed a deal last year and he hasn't paid me the money. And, seemed very frustrated that he was blabbing to every customer in the area about this. And I just said, I'd buy it. So the next day she came down to my offices down the other end of the industrial estate. She named her price because that was the price that was set by the other chap. And I just said, I'll do it. I'll buy it for that price. Not knowing how I'd actually afford to do it. And it turns out we'd done an asset finance on that particular business and paid her outright 100% on day one. A few caveats to that. I had no advice other than my father. It was a full asset refinance. I had minus £3,000 in the bank at the time in my overdraft. And on day one, Kim and her co-owner, husband Pat, took all the money out of the business. So I brought it on a Wednesday, come Friday was the wages, which was about 3 grand a week at the time. And in between, obviously, I'm pulling my hair out, thinking, "Oh my God, how am I going to afford the wages, the payroll?" So I actually rented out an acre of the site to a skip company to put a mountain of rubbish, you know, the size of the Eiffel Tower. It was
Yeah.
unbelievably big. You know, it was like a kid's bouncy castle. You know, I wouldn't recommend kids climbing on that. Which the staff, you know, frantically panicked and went, "Oh my God, you've ruined the company. What have you done?" But the guy gave me £4,000 to go pay the wages on the Friday. So I knew if I didn't pay the wages on my first pay run, they would have gone, "No, sod this. We're not working for a guy who's younger than we've worked at the business," because the business was 30 years old at the time, and I was 21, 22. I've had a few exits and buys from that, but if I could start from that point at 21, I ran.
Yeah, just before you do, Charlie, I'm really curious. So that world for me, from a business perspective, I know very limited about that kind of industry. But it sounds from what you've already said, you're born entrepreneur. So was your old man, was he an entrepreneur as well?
Yeah, so he was, my granddad was, my great granddad was, and
Okay, all right. Yep.
it's a mix of success, bankruptcy, failures, born again success. And I'll just do a quick overview. Like my great granddad Vic, he invented the digger bucket. So
Wow.
it was called Norton Buckets from Ransome Heath, and he actually built a whole village from that warehouse, and there's estates named after him. Then my granddad Bruce, with the family money, which would have been like the multi of millions at that point, and this back in the 50s or 60s. He actually bought 3 container ships with the family money, and then 2 of them sunk in the first week without no insurance. So he went bankrupt. And then my dad grew up poor on a barge, as he likes to refer to himself as a water gypsy.
Yeah.
Um, and my dad had multiple jobs growing up. He was a bouncer, a truck driver, an RE teacher, a train driver. So did my mum, was a cleaner, and she sold Cadbury's chocolates into off licenses. Um, and they were great parents, always tried to provide the best for me and my brother and set us straight. And then my dad eventually became an ops director of some shareholding in a very big car logistics company, like doing 20 million a year, delivering the Queen's carriage, Beckham's cars, Top Gear, Fast and Furious. Really cool exposure at a young age to see all these really cool cars. And then that business unfortunately had to fold because an accountant stole £500,000 out of the company for all sorts of reasons.
Wow.
So then we had to sell our fairly decent house in a nice area, go to a really naff area, and start again when I was about 16. So now I watched my dad sell the house, buy more trucks, going at 100% in a new vehicle logistics business. And that's where it got me to about 17, 18, where he was getting back on the right path. And I've seen it go, entrepreneurship and in a silent family household, the ups and downs of it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's
I
proper roller coaster, that, mate, isn't it?
Yeah, proper. And it just inspired me because I always knew it was a pathway to a better life. And I always wanted to provide a better life for my family as well, which touch wood, we can today. Yeah, that's why I had the entrepreneurial bug since I was young, to be honest with you.
And I'm sorry, mate, I cut you off a little bit there. You were in your flow. I was just really curious about where kind of where some of that driving force and motivation came from. So you approached this lady, you buy that company,
Yes.
and then it's payday and coming up. And you got nowhere paying, so they've cleared out the account. So you get creative and yeah, and you make the pay run happen.
hmm And a lot of my career has been, 'cause I've never really done any like training courses or had any non-execs or advisors on my team other than my dad. Has been very much through experience, learned the hard way. Um, and whilst we can talk about training courses later, I do feel like maybe I could have shortcutted a lot of my pain if I had some professional advice or a community or some training done officially. But I think that's the joys of it as well, of being an entrepreneur. You have to learn the hard way a little bit as well. Even if you are getting told not to do this, you'll still have to go learn it yourself.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think I've ever learnt a lesson the easy way. For me, it's part of that process, and I don't just mean entrepreneurship. You know, if I look back at my schooling record, do you know what I mean? I was noisy, I was lively, and I was very uninterested in having to sit down for hours, unless it was a subject I was up for. I think, yeah, I just think we're wired very, very differently. That kind of roller coaster, the ups and downs, is interesting. I don't have quite that frame of reference for it, but I remember describing to somebody what it's like being an entrepreneur in a day, you know, and it's not normal because, you know, there are massive highs and lows during the course of a 12-hour period. And I think people that like stability probably should avoid you know, building companies. If you like firefighting and, you know, the old heart racing and fuck, how are we going to sort this out, then it's a calling for lots of us.
100%. And I think it does get easier with experience and repetitions. Like, um, how to navigate certain difficulties because you've been there and done it. And, if I could look at the 20-year-old version of myself and just shake him and say it's going to be all right, don't worry. You have to go through all this pain and hardship in order to be good at entrepreneurship and running businesses and managing people and getting customers and all these different aspects that go into it. And I do feel a lot of people, especially people who've never done it before, think, well, the boss is just gallivanting, la di da.
Yeah.
It's an easy ride, but really you have to try to master so many different skill sets and functions in the business where you're stretched to all aspects until you obviously delegate and get the right people and systems in place, and eventually, you slowly step out of the business. Just a quick random note to that. I've recently said to the team at Vamos, we're a team of 7 of us now, you guys are going to be running your respective departments and you're only going to get me a day a week going forward. And that's literally just started today, even though we prepped it for a month in advance because we're entering our year 3 of the business sales part of Vamos. And I'm always a big believer that, even though we're not looking to exit in the near future, we've got to be that way inclined.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
You know, and it also just gives me time to focus on our other businesses like True Value, the commercial finance brokerage. Obviously, as you know, AI and automations are so prominent in today's world. Got to get on top of that as well. That's a whole new
It is
bag.
so much happening, mate. So much happening. So talk to us then about the I guess the big exit. So that kind of, whether that was the first business, but what was the business that, really kind of emotionally had you deeply connected, that you kind of heart and soul, and then you went through that process. That's the bit I'm always particularly interested in talking about.
And I feel like I'm going to be a little bit of a letdown because my stance on business exits and business in general, as my emotional intelligence in regards to them, is actually quite cold. And I'll talk about the big exit
Yeah, yeah.
in a second. But with my philosophy on business, and this actually comes from my dad, and I might misquote him when I say this, but he used to say to me, business should be a 3-year journey. Build it, maintain it, sell it.
He
That's what
sounds
he's
like he sounds like a legend.
is.
I think I need your old man on this
Uh,
podcast.
honestly, he's got more wild stories than I have. He's lived a life, certainly. But yeah, no, and that always stuck in my head. And having gone through, I call it hardship, but when I went through the different cycles of the first businesses I bought and the stuff I was objected to, it made me very cold emotionally towards business because I thought, well, this business survived before I was even born. It'll survive after me. So I learned to be quite cold, emotionally unavailable when it came to business.
Yep.
But saying that, the big exit, the one that happened 2 years ago, and this must be my 4th or 5th exit at the time, but this was the one that was in the multi millions of pounds and the one that probably, set me up for life, so to speak, was actually quite a turmoil. And I'll explain it a bit more
Yeah,
in
yeah, please
details.
do.
I said about the Newcroft training I bought at 21. I sold it at 25 to a local college provider, not for millions, like a very modest amount. And then I brought it back 2.5 years later. In between them 2.5 years, we had COVID. I brought a vehicle recovery business. I brought all sorts of little businesses, even a music studio, all sorts of side projects, as I'd like to call them now. But now I brought Newcroft Training back, and this was after I'd done a few rounds in the podcast space and MMA courses. Not me personally, but as a guest speaker about my story. So I actually knew MMA was an industry, you meant to group companies together and, have a big exits. And then I thought, okay, that's going to be my end in mind with Newcroft going into round two of it. Lucky enough, it was all my old team that I employed and trained. So it was a much easier going in than the first time because it was my site, my people, my customers, everything. So it was a lot easier for me to come back in. Although it needed a bit of TLC because the previous owners didn't give it that. Um, so I bought Newcroft, and then I went going on a buy and build strategy. So I ended up buying 5 other training schools around the
Wow.
country. And it very much my industry. Everyone in that industry knows who I am. I know who they are, and it's very much I was very much involved in that industry. And then about 2.5, 3 years later, coming to March 2024, so this time 2 years ago roughly, I went and bought a business in Derby for £1. And it's funny, the broker came to me a year and a half before that, said this business is worth £1.2 million. And I'm not going to name the broker because we get along, even though I think that's a ludicrous valuation. I said it at the time. I actually offered about 650 at the time because that's what it was valued at, in my opinion. And come January 2024, they came back to me and said, "Oh, you look to buy his business. We don't want to run it anymore." All that sort of stuff. And I said, "Yeah, let's give it a go. Let's review the numbers." I noticed the business has fallen off a cliff, not in terms of turnover and profitability on paper, but more on their debt serviceability, the amount of debt they owe. They owed rent for 8 months at the time or 7 months at a time. They owed staff wages. Like, there was clearly an issue with cash flow or the management of cash flow, as I could see it. Anyway, come March, I drive up to Derby, ready to sign over the business for actually £300,000 at the time. Uh, and then I literally got pen to paper like this close to the desk. And then the owners at the time showed me a statutory demand for unpaid rent for 9 months. And they went, "Oh, yeah, we thought we'd best show you this. It came last Friday." And they was acting very nonchalant about it. And I've seen statutory demands before, I've issued them before, so I'm very aware when it comes to commercial disputes. And I just said to them, "Do you know what this means?" They went, No idea, apparently. And I went, "Well, it means in 21 days, if you don't pay this bill, they're going to apply for a winding up order and your company's done, essentially. It's just done." So I drove home in a bit of anger because I was like, I can't believe they just trying to make me sign over, knowing there was a big commercial legal dispute going on. So I pulled out, and that was on the 22nd of March because my birthday's 2 days before that. So I remember this quite vividly.
Mm.
Had my birthday, come to the Friday, I get another call that, we really need help. We need to clear all these debts off. I went, okay, I'll buy it, but I'll buy it for £1 and I'll clear the debts. Yeah, that's my contribution. I'll employ you both as well so you can get some more income. Um, anyway, bought it for £1. First day, 40 grand in the business from me injected, cleared the immediate debts. There was still around 250 grand more of debts that were going to come into my face as time went on because they didn't disclose all the debts. I know, yeah, and I was silly because whilst I had my lawyer doing their checks if the company's real and the shares and all that stuff, I didn't bother to get an accountant that time because I thought, well, I've got a business already doing 3 million a year in this space. I've done it. I've brought like 15 companies at this point. I know best. Basically,
Mm.
it's Charlie Big
Mm.
Bollocks put his hat on and charging for everything. I know best. Whilst we and it was actually a very short but sweet story. Well, I'll say sweet. It was a short story. So in the 8 weeks I was there, we cleared the debts. We paid the staff who had some that had 2 to 3 months' wages outstanding. And this was one of them businesses that are all like family.
Yeah.
We're all family, and all that. And I don't. I love my colleagues, and I'll do anything for my team. and other people in general. But let's not pretend we're all family when the owners are skiving 2 grand a week out of the business, not paying the bills, not paying the staff. To me, that's not family.
No, no, no. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, and they was doing it for all sorts of ways. I believe they was paying for a dead person's account as well to get avoid tax. It was unbelievable, like the stories. And to me, family is sacrifice everything you've got, including clothes on your back, make sure they're okay, not the other way round, in my opinion. Anyway, in them 8 weeks, I was in Derby because it was like, hands on deck, you know, sort the ship out. I actually had my partner come up with me, my girlfriend at the time, who's now the mother of my children. She was actually, I hired her after we started dating into my Newcroft business as an ops manager because she had a lot of similar background.
Yep.
So I actually brought her up to Derby with me, one for, a little family trip, why not? But secondly, so she can see the other operations managers, understand what they're doing, maybe confer and swap ideas and, grow together essentially. Of our sort of business, the ops manager can actually just work for a laptop anywhere in the world because
Yeah,
you're
yeah, of
booking in
course.
courses and DVSA tests and whatnot. Anyway, throughout them 8 weeks, the previous owners were using me as a scapegoat on why they didn't pay their bills for 2 years, or their staff for 3 months, or their rent for 9 months, and they started using me as a scapegoat, which I'm not used to being the young Cockney Essex chap coming with business, big to do, and then suddenly go, it's his fault. I don't mind that to a degree. What I did mind was people bursting into my new office door in Derby, calling me a crook, all because I said to them, I'm not going to pay this bill that you've got a PG on because I didn't sign over any PGs because I'm not an idiot. But I'm going to delay this particular bill for 1 month, the phone PG bill, and pay this person's bill because that's my capital allocation on this particular part because I just feel what's morally right. Maybe paying your staff is morally right.
I mean, I would agree with that approach, Charlie, for sure.
I'm glad you do because at the time I must admit I felt like, am I going insane at this point? I really asked myself, like, is this right for me? Do I even like haulage? Because I grew up in haulage. Don't think I actually loved haulage, especially, a couple of years ago when I was changing a truck battery and the spanner hit my eyebrow and I'm bleeding all across my face. I think that was one of the times I thought, I don't really like haulage that much.
I don't like haulage and I don't like getting lamped with a spanner. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Took it well, though. I didn't realise I was bleeding until someone told me. But with Derby, so that kind of burned and crashed in flames because eventually in the last week of the 8 weeks, the former owners, Kevin Haley, turned around to me and said, if you don't give us back the company for £1, we're going to get all the staff to quit and leave. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I think one of the reasons why they did this, one, because I cleared the debts. Two, because I actually made it more profitable. So it was doing about 60 grand a month. Within my first month, we'd done 95 grand a month. And
Well,
that's because I knew the right triggers to pull. I knew how to advertise. I knew the margins. Because it was my industry, I knew instantly what I'd do from the marketing, sales and profitability perspective. So they saw these great improvements and I don't know, they must not have attributed to me for whatever reason. They thought, oh, what he's doing is easy. Anyway, they said, give us back for £1. I went, and to be honest, I turned around to them and said, yeah, I'll give it back to you, but just pay me back the money I've invested in the business and a bit of my time.
yep.
And I wouldn't charge an arm and leg for my time because I don't probably value my time as much as I probably should. And we got on the phone with our lawyers, many of whom the industry would have known. In fact, I work with to this day. And I'm on a Zoom call, and actually my dad's funny enough come up to Derby. He's behind the computer screen because he's not present because I just wanted him to listen into this to make sure I wasn't going insane. And throughout the conversation with the brokers, the lawyers, us and them, I just went, I'm happy to get back to you. Just pay me back my money I've invested in a little bit more time. And then the wife of the husband and wife team was jumping up and down the Zoom saying, he's a crook, he's a crook. And it flabbergasted me. So that was on a Friday. On the Sunday, I decided to take a temporary memorandum of trade, which basically temporary closing the business because I thought, well, all the staff have left. This business is, pardon my language, but screwed, for want of a better word. So I sent a group WhatsApp message, and bear in mind there was only 2 employees and the rest were subcontractors anyway. And the 2 employees, one was their daughter-in-law, the other was their best mate from the pub, and they both quit, no notice period, dropped their tools on them on that week. So I texted the group chat on Sunday, so it would take a temporary memorandum of trade, so it was temporary closing, whilst we sort this out, you know. So on that weekend, I get all these messages saying, "No, you can't close. That's illegal." You know, all these different accusations. And then the previous owners come to the yard, the office in the yard premises with an angle grinder, smashing into
Oh my
to
God, this is mental, mate. This
I
needs to
know.
be a Netflix series.
I do laugh now. At the time, it was very distressing because I was actually in Essex looking on my like camera on my phone, thinking, "Oh my god, he's breaking in!" And obviously, I've kept the recordings as well. For comedy. Really. I was actually going to post one because after he smashed the angle grinder, he went into the company safe, and this safe was bigger than me. It's a big old safe, and there's a video of him like turning the lock, opening the door, and looking all surprised, like nothing was there. So, obviously I took everything to be precautionary because I thought, who knows, what could happen. Um, and then actually, there's also more recordings because there's audio visual recordings from the internal cameras of the wife ringing the Derby local news to say, oh, he's brought his business under duress and he's a crook and all this sort of stuff. Um, I laugh now. I must admit, I was mortified at the time. So bear in mind all that drama that was
Yeah.
going on. I turned around and I was like, you know what? I bloody hate haulage. As terms of owning a business, I appreciate what it does for your economy and other business owners who do haulage. But me, I've had my run. I don't like it. I'm not passionate about. I'm passionate about business and helping people. That's what I'm truly passionate about. I'm a bit of a business nerd, so to speak. But with haulage, I'm done. Finished, finito, done. So I actually went to sell the Derby business on its own. So I actually rang up all the local competitors. I was part of the top 5 of the HGV industry. So I rang the other 4 and said, "Oh, got this Derby location. We should either say test centre, got trucks, got custom, got trade and whatnot. Do you want him?" Explained to them the story I just explained to you. And they went, "Well, we're not surprised because we're their local competitors and we know they're nut jobs." We know they're a bit loop-de-loop. Uh, Through that conversation, talking about Derby, the other conversation eventually came, "What are you doing with your other businesses then?" So they actually capitalised on my stress, which, fair play to them. I've got no issues with that. So eventually we agreed a deal for the group rather than
Wow.
just Derby.
It's amazing, though, how, that crisis and remaining resilient throughout it, meant that meant there was an acquisition of the group. I love that.
Yeah, and it's just because I was frank and honest with them. I said, Derby's going to crap, and I ain't got any passion for the other businesses. It's not like I wake up every day, I'm buzzing to go to work like I am with Vamos, whether we have a good day or bad day, so to speak, economically. With haulage, when it was a bad day, it was a really, really, really bad day. When it was a good day, it was a bit anticlimactic. I was like, that's all right day, I guess, makes the money. Yeah, that was it. So I actually sold that business or the group of companies for actually a lot less than I probably should have done. But that's because I wanted it quickly. I wanted a lot of consideration, the initial cash up front. And I wanted to walk away with a short handover.
Yeah, yeah.
I was lucky I had a management team in place where the handover was mostly done with them. I was just handling over my little responsibilities in the business. So that was being, the maverick, Mr. Motivator, the marketeer, so to speak. But unlike what you've seen and other people have seen in recent years, I wasn't really much on the personal branding front. I didn't believe in personal branding. I was always very much, this is school, let's advertise on Google, Facebook, SEO, all call potential clientele and have commercial relationships, B2B or B2G, uh, and some B2C obviously. But I'm never really about the personal brand. And obviously now with that, I'm more about personal brands to people's type of business. But yeah, no, it's an interesting. It's very. I was very relieved to walk out of it all. I remember, like, even before the money came in for its official completion, I was actually in Ibiza, knowing that I was exiting. not saying it wasn't a sure, it was definitely a sure thing, because obviously I know with this process, especially being an advisor and a broker on this process now, that things can change,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
goalposts can shift.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
at the time, I was thinking, well, you're getting it a multi-million pound turnover and a very, very healthy EBIT for a 2x multiple. And when I could have pushed for a 4 or 5 very easily.
But you've hit the nail on the head. You want it out, and that's the bit, isn't it? That kind of, from a personal perspective, I think once we get heads around the fact that we're in or we're out, or it changes, and that kind of love affair for it moves along, then it is definitely time to exit stage left. And when you talk about Vamos and True Value, you like legit light up, Charlie. So there's already a distinct kind of difference. And is it well, it'd be really interesting to hear a bit more about Vamos and True Value, and what kind of motivated you to want to go and build, from an advisory perspective.
Yeah, so having been a buyer and seller for 14 odd years, I I must look at, I still got this habit, whether it's good or bad, but look at businessesforsale.com every day since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And I used to see these businesses on the marketplace, and because I was looking at it every single day, either in haulage or where I'm from in Essex, I'd see these listings there for years, absolute years. And I think that's weird. Like, that must be in my head a bad business. If it's not selling at the time, it must be a bad business. But then as I became an inquirer and more of a serious buyer, I realised why, because it was overvalued from to begin with. And the seller's expectations were just way off from any realistic, potential purchaser. In fact, I saw one guy who owns a storage group of companies saying his storage business makes 200 grand a year profit is worth 8 million uh, on this podcast the other day. I thought that is unbelievable, because if I had to spare 8 million, I'm not going to buy it on that shitty little business. Pardon my
It's
French.
No, it's funny though, isn't it? Because I do think, and we talk about this a lot, people have got their head up their arse around valuations. And, because a mate has sold the business for 5, 6, 7, 8x at some point, unrelated to the current economy, in a completely different sector. Or the other favourite I hear is, I've worked on this for 10 years. It must be worth 10 mil. I'm
Yeah.
like, mate, it just doesn't work like that.
I know, and it is sad because having gone through the peaks and troughs of entrepreneurship, I know how much blood, sweat, and tears is invested in starting a business, running a business, and growing a business. And I've got a lot of empathy for people who have done that and, want to exit. My one key phrase, I've got two key phrases. One of them is exit the business before it exits you. And if you are withering away, or you have an emergency, or a relocation, or you fall out of love, or whatever it is, or go bankrupt, because you do run the risk of doing that, running your own business. Um, you know, that's not the way you want to exit. You want to exit on your own terms. So get proper advice, make sure your financials are right, and maybe reverse engineer from that ideal number to what your business should look like in that case. And Vamos was spurned from frustration, because not only were business overvalued, I had also had other business brokers, who I won't name for the want not to be sued, come down to my office, overvalue my businesses at the time, then ask for 30 grand up front to go market the business. And then as I've got more into this industry, I realised they're just marketing companies. They're not actual brokerages. And
Well, and I think they're probably worse than that, because I think that would imply they're actually hoping to sell something at the end of it. I equally won't name names, but the amount of these businesses I've seen that have got a long tail in the contract, so if it ever actually gets sold, then they're on the earn, whether they've done anything or not. But it reminds me in my teenage years, I did my work experience for a con man. I didn't know that at the time. He was subsequently plastered across the sun and went to prison. But he had this marketing group, and they were marketing property for in China for the in Hong Kong, and they were selling property. before Pats were making a move. We're back in the 90s here. And it was all a big scam. And people would send a check through the post, they would market the property. They never sold a property because that wasn't actually the aim. They just wanted these checks for 125 nicker. And it was like, Santa's sack every morning. There was a stack of these coming in. I mean, I found out later that, I guess you have a feeling somebody might be a bit suspect. But yeah, I found out later that he was a con man. And I think a lot of these outfits are they're earning off the wrong part of it, which I think gives the rest of us a hell of a bad reputation.
Yeah, 100%. And the word broker is a dirty word to some, and I'm trying to clean up that word deal by deal. And brokers should really be facilitating a transaction between two parties, and hopefully it's a win-win transaction. I'm a big believer it should be a win-win transaction. And when I've got free acid tests before I take a client on, and I might have told you this before, but it's, are they worth £1 million to £50 million? Can we get them to heads of terms within 90 days? Our current average is 61 days. And then would I buy them hypothetically? Like, I'm not interested in buying all my customers. Like, we sold one for £4 million the other day, commercial cleaning company, and I wouldn't buy that business because I don't know much about commercial cleaning, to be honest with you. But would I buy them from a balance sheet perspective, a P&L perspective, an operational structure perspective? Do I look at this business, go, this is a solid investment, a solid asset. It's not just a profitable job. I don't think any business that is a profitable job would be worth £1 million, our minimum standards anyway. But, you can probably find one exception to that rule. And, all my clients, we always talk about all the different exit options, even if it doesn't actually come into our domain, like if it's an EOT, which otherwise advise a tax filer and accountant work on, uh, but we would assist in putting them in the right direction on that, or an MBI, whether it's your own team buying you out, which we wouldn't really want to take a percentage of that anyway. We'd rather just assist you getting the right exit. My whole MO for Vamos is to save people from them shysters of
Yep.
brokers that we spoke about.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you.
And when I even speak to some businesses who are below our range, below sub-million, I just give them open, honest advice. I just say, look, avoid these people, like, please, whatever you do, because otherwise I'll lose hair if you go with them. Or use these people, these types of people. People are honest, realistic, and actually get businesses sold.
Yep.
And then similar with true values, moving on to that, is also brought
Charlie,
up.
just before you do, just for listeners, the businesses that you work with, what sectors? We talked a bit about haulage, we talked about training. So what, and I guess the bit that I'm really wanting to drill down in here is lots of us are good at lots of things. What sort of businesses are you fucking brilliant at marketing and selling?
Interesting question. So we are sector agnostic. We would take any business on as they fit in them free acid tests, as I like to call them. But the businesses that I find easier to sell and have a lot more success with is actually the asset heavy industries.
Yep.
So manufacturing, haulage, anything that has hard tangible assets. And simply because, through leverage and creative deal making, you can get the bank to lend against those assets in order to fund the payment of such. And obviously, with my background being haulage, alcohol manufacturing, I have quite a good view on what these assets are worth anyway as a valuer. The balance sheet might say something else. I've got a rough idea what the market rates would be on them assets.
Mm.
So they're always good. Um, and also companies that have add up not just a second tier management team, but have the right source. They have the right systems and processes. And I can tell the owner generally doesn't work day to day because I speak to different types of owners every single day. And some of them say, oh, yeah, I've got a second tier management team. I don't work in the business. And I go, all right, well, if I put you on a remote island for 6 months, does the business grow? Does it decrease? Does it maintain? What happens? He went, well, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this, I need to do that. And suddenly you get down to the crux of it where they actually are fundamental to the business. But I meet other owners who are like, oh, I do the payroll once a month or a management meeting once a month. I'm like, fair play to you. And you could just tell straight
Yeah,
off the bat
they're
how they
doing it.
talk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're working on rather than in the business. Yeah.
100%.
So tell us a bit about True Value then, mate.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons why I'm now working 1 day a week on Vamos inside the business is because I want to focus more on true value and on commercial finance and the AI stuff. So True Value was originally spawned from me doing 23 valuations a week when I first started. And I thought, oh my God, so I need to take in 4 hours, I need to take 4 days. Yeah, it's a lot of graft, so to speak, mentally and time consuming. So eventually I built my own internal software to put my valuation methodology, a lot of research papers, market comparables. So it would just spit me out a rough valuation, and then I'd have to tweak it if I spot the software hasn't computed it correctly. So I had that for 6 months, and it decreased the time to valuation to about 20 minutes or even 10 minutes, depending on the information or the tweaks. So then I was sitting there one day last September, and I was thinking, oh, as a brokerage, we have no recurring revenue, because very much commission only. And, we have to start from zero every month, which, in business isn't a nice feeling, even though I love it. So I was sitting there thinking, what do we do for recurring revenue? I don't want to do buy side advisory because I find it like pulling your teeth out, to be honest with you. Um, so I was sitting there, I was looking at a blank software screen of the valuation. I thought, wow, we should build this to the public and let other people use it. Because at the end of the day, what I want to do is standardize valuations in the UK. So this will help do that. So eventually it was just a valuation software. One day, went to Mayfair for dinner for my dad's birthday, was quite hungover. The next day, I do my best work when I'm hungover, which is quite bad because I've just stopped drinking. I feel like
We're
because
not getting we're not getting any more productivity out of you then,
no,
mate.
exactly,
You're,
yeah.
you're the opposite of the rest of us.
I know. I have to probably pick up some other vices to get my creative juices flowing. So I was hungover and I thought, let's turn True Value into a full MMA suite, like data rooms, deal structuring, IM builders, teasers, uh, deal management, like the stages of the deal. So whether you're a business broker, a business advisor, a business buyer, you're an accountant, wealth manager, IFA, wherever you are in the sphere of MMA, it will have a utility for you. And it's not going to cost you thousands a month like all them tools would if you bought them separately. It only costs like £99 a month. I've had accountants go to me, "Why so cheap? Why are you doing this so cheap?" But it just spawns from what I would want. I would want something that has it all, connects it all together, is efficient, but also doesn't cost an arm and a leg. Yeah. And that's just a Charlie perspective, really. Some people have said to me, you should be charging at least £500 a month. Your competitors are charging thousands a month. Um, so why don't you? But similar to Vamos, it's just here to help people out. Like similar to you, I assume, I've gone past the point of caring about money. And for me, it's about what disruption can I do? What can I change in the world? What do I see that's unjust and that I need to set right? And the True Value and Vamos are a part of that, to be honest with you.
I love that, and there's I think we've said this before when we've chatted, but that kind of being of service to others is a common theme I think between the two of us, and it really pisses me off when I hear people have been locked in on some of these deals or they've paid ridiculous money to try and get a business advertised. I mean, I think the most insulting bit is the long tail in some of these contracts. That was the first business we helped sell was a mate who was my boss before, and the broker that they'd signed up with did absolutely fuck all. And then when the business got sold, it was it came with a long tail, and so she ended up paying out off the back of that, which yeah, I mean, it's just galling. It's all well and good, having to pay and pay well for a good service. People expect that, but I think if you haven't delivered, and I mean, it's just criminal. It doesn't sit well with me. Charlie, final question from me is if you had to go and do it all again, and I know you've done it a few times anyway, but if you had to do it again, if you were chatting to 20-year-old Charlie now, What would you be saying to him?
Go harder, go faster with more conviction. Yeah,
Nice.
don't stop doubting yourself, stop second guessing yourself, and just run into it head first, because maybe I would have gotten further along. But in general, I have no regrets or things I would want to change. If I was sitting in front of 20-year-old Charlie, I'd just say, do what you're doing, but on steroids. Go harder, go faster, and just hit it harder. And that's the only advice I would give to any young person, in fact. And I believe, as long as you're moving, you'll never be stagnant.
Yeah, I agree with that. And would 20-year-old Charlie have listened?
No. So, 20-year-old Charlie had his own way of life,
He,
own.
he knew it all.
He knew it all, exactly. And it's a bit like the Dunning-Kruger effect. You think you know a lot, so you think you're the expert, and then life kicks you down, and then you realise you've got a lot more to learn. And the wisest person knows that they know nothing at all. And I'm always learning every day, even through your content. I watch it and I go, that's cool. That's cool. Even when you've done the presentation at the Acquisition Collective, I thought that was a really good presentation. It's always good to be learning.
I agree. It's funny that, because I was out with a friend of mine a couple of weeks back, and we've been mates since we were at school. And I said to her, we would have been dangerous with this level of confidence. I'm 47. I'm 48 actually this weekend, but I'm 47 at the minute. But I tell you, if I'd had the confidence I have now at 20, I think I'd have been locked up. But also, I had all the answers at 20, and so it was like, I thought I knew it all anyway. But yeah, Charlie, thank you, mate. I have really, really enjoyed chatting, and I suspect we could talk for an extended period, and a genuine offer. But I would love to have you and your old man on the pod together. If he ever fancied joining us in the future, we could do a little group session. But thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Rach. It's been a pleasure to be here today, and looking forward to seeing it come out.
Before you go, if you like what you're listening to on the Exiteers podcast, like, review and subscribe. Is that right? Okay, perfect. Cheers.